putting the GCC house in order. Leaders of the 6 countries that make up the Gulf Cooperation Council will meet in Doha on Tuesday. It's a summit that comes in the wake of a crisis that threatened to break up this bloc. A deal was reached, but many thorny issues remain. So can the Doha summit be a turning point in Gulf ties? Hello, a warm welcome to the programme. I'm Hazem Seeker. Well, it's a regional bloc made up of some of the Arab world's most powerful and wealthy nations. The Gulf Cooperation Council, whose members are Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The leaders of the 6 countries will meet here in Doha on Tuesday. Now, the summit comes at a time when the Middle East faces major threats to its stability and security. But it's not just conflicts in Syria and Iraq, as well as disputes with Iran, that will dominate the agenda. The 6 Gulf states will be looking to put their own affairs in order. That's after months of disagreement that have threatened to break up the GCC itself. It's been a turbulent year for Gulf relations. In March, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain pulled their ambassadors from Doha after accusing Qatar of interfering in their domestic affairs and supporting so-called Islamist groups like the Muslim Brotherhood. The Qatari government denies this. Last month, those ambassadors returned to the Qatari capital, signalling an end to perhaps one of the worst crises to face the bloc since it was founded. But disagreements remain, particularly over relations with Egypt, where a military coup toppled Mohammed Morsi last year. Let's bring in our guests now to talk more about this. In Jeddah, we have Khalid Batarfi, who is an assistant professor at Al Faisal University. He is also a senior columnist with Saudi Gazette newspaper. Joining us from London, Saeed Al-Shahabi, a Bahraini political activist. And joining me here in the studio is David Roberts, who is a lecturer at King's College here in Doha and a former deputy director of the Royal United Services Institute. Thank you for being with us, all 3 of you. Let me start with you, David. So this is being billed as a reconciliation summit here in Doha, but is it all about reconciliation?
It certainly is from the perspective of the GCC. I mean, they are in the midst of something of a crisis, as you outlined. To the north, Daesh; to the east, Iran, that's been recalibrated; to the south, Yemen implodes as ever; to the west, maybe we could look at Sinai. They see problems on every front, to say nothing of the oil price going through the floor. There's a lot of crises around them. So they want to stop the crisis that was bubbling within them, as it were. But the problem is that it's not quite as simple as that. The GCC has faced various problems before, and its reactions haven't always worked. They've had overreactions. So just very briefly, after the invasion of Iraq, they had this Damascus Declaration, this idea of involving Egypt and Syria in the security of the GCC. But the crisis came, the idea was formed, the problem passed and it disappeared. Started the Arab Spring, of course, the crisis came up, the idea was maybe we'll get Jordan and Morocco into the GCC. Of course, the crisis kind of carried on a little. It wasn't as serious as they thought, and nothing came of it. And this is the concern for this one. We do have a crisis, we do have a reaction, but with the track record, you can't be that confident going forward, I think.
Khalid Batarfi, what's your view on this? Is this summit a turning point for the GCC?
Looking at the agenda, it's nothing amazing in there. I mean, it's nothing different than any other agenda before. I mean, this region has been surrounded with troubles and troublemakers since its inception, and today is no different than yesterday. The same players, the same game, but I hope this time they have a more unified front with Qatar on board, and they could face this crisis with one voice and one heart.
Saeed Al-Shahabi, is this, are they just papering over the cracks here? We talked there about reconciliation, but how much reconciliation is actually going to be done? When we look back to what happened in March, when 3 of those countries withdrew their ambassadors from Qatar, now they've brought them back. But are they just sort of papering over the differences?
Well, thank you very much. While they would like to see a united and a unified front, there are always those hiccups in the process, and of course the withdrawal of the 3 ambassadors was was an unprecedented step in the history, as you correctly mentioned earlier, in the history of the GCC, which was formed in 1981. Now there are more difficult questions, especially on the level of the foreign relations, the links with Iran, the relations with the Muslim Brotherhood, the stand towards the military authorities in Egypt, and also the relations with other players like Iraq and Syria. So I think they will have a lot to digest and to agree on. And of course, the summit itself is usually symbolic. Usually the decisions and the agreements are taken well before the summit, and those, the attendance by the GCC presidents and heads of states is usually a symbolic gesture to show unity, and I do not know how much of a unity is going to happen this time.
David Roberts, this issue of Qatar and its support for the Muslim Brotherhood and the rift, the rift with the other countries have with Qatar over that, has that really been resolved? I mean, because there are Muslim Brotherhood, senior members of the Muslim Brotherhood who are still here in Qatar, and some of the other issues that those countries had with Qatar haven't really been fully resolved, have they?
Well, we've seen some movement. We've seen Qatar agree not to naturalise Bahraini citizens, for example. This is the one thing that's been announced that was very well received in Manama. As you mentioned, in terms of the Brotherhood, a few of the leadership, a few senior, prominent Brotherhood members who were resident in Doha, they've left, 5, 6, 7 of them. But I think you're broadly right. I mean, we're yet to see a strategic change. It hasn't been long enough, of course. It's only been a few weeks. But we are yet to see any strong evidence of a real meaningful change in Qatar's perspective, in its orientation, if you will. I mean, trying to sort of, we're all being quite sort of pessimistic almost, and I think that's probably, I might even say it's realistic, but if we try to look for a proverbial silver lining with this, I mean, if you're in the GCC and if you're looking, I mean, Yemen is, it's as bad as it's always been and it's getting worse, but more particularly maybe Iran. If you're seeing the potential of an American-Iranian nuclear agreement, then that has the real potential to entirely recalibrate Gulf security. And that is, you know, all these massive kind of changes that are, of course, concerning to the GCC. So that will engender a certain amount of unanimity almost. There are common problems there. But, I mean, the question is if the problems are near enough, I think, to forge the unity over the differences.
Let's give you a little bit more background now on the GCC. Despite the political disagreements, the GCC has proved to be a major asset economically for Gulf nations. The bloc was established in 1981 and grew to include a customs union in 2003. That year, the value of trade between the member states was around $23 billion, but it's now worth more than $120 billion a year. And the Gulf nations, as we've mentioned, are some of the wealthiest in the world. Their aggregate GDP totals $1.6 trillion. So if I could turn back to you on this, Khalid, how much are economic issues going to play a part in this summit?
Well, I think this is the major, assets of the GCC is its economic cooperation and social relations and the people-to-people relation, business-to-business relation. Those are very important issues. And there are issues that are not resolved yet, like the one currency for all members and the customs making it using the same custom codes and the same trade rules. There are things that need to be ironed out, and it's not happening completely yet. And I think maybe in this summit, it's not gonna be a major announcement on this road, but it's a continuous work towards some kind of like European Union unification or economic unification.
Saeed al-Shahabi, you mentioned earlier how Iran in the past has been an issue that they are divided over, and this kind of division between the Sunni Arab Gulf nations and Iran on the other side. But they do share this common enemy right now in trying to defeat ISIL in Iraq and Syria. That is something that they can surely find some common ground on, at least temporarily, isn't it?
Well, definitely, both sides of the Gulf want to some sort of rapprochement. They want to reconcile. However, there are many difficult issues. Yes, they want to contain the threat of ISIS or ISIL. Iran does not like ISIS to spread its control over Syria or over Iraq. Neither does the Saudi Arabia or any other country, because it is a threat to all of them. However, there are other major issues. Now, for example, my colleague earlier mentioned about the economic situation, and your question about the economic integration and so on. Now, with the Saudis tending to suppress the prices of oil to below $70 a barrel, I am sure that is not going to hold good with Iran or even with Oman, for example, which depend mostly on oil income and oil revenues. So again, there is a lot of pressure and a lot of blame apportioned on Saudis for letting the prices go down because of overproduction. So yes, they want to agree on facing the challenges of ISIS and containing its threat, but at the same time there are other issues at stake, especially with regards to what has been seen, the counter-revolution against the Arab Spring that took place 4 years ago, and rise of the military dictatorship in Egypt and in other places. So I think there are major issues dividing the GCC leaders at this moment of time.
Well, let's talk more about some of those economic issues at the summit, more specifically oil prices, as we've just been discussing there. We're talking about a group of countries that produces more than half of the world's oil. This year has seen a dramatic decrease in the price of crude oil, which now stands at less than $70 a barrel. That means the price has dived by nearly 40% of the last 5 months or so. So if we look at the implications of that, David Roberts, for the GCC countries, how are they going to respond to this if those oil prices continue to fall?
They don't know. We don't know. I mean, half of this depends, of course, as to why Saudi is so keen to let the price fall. I mean, a lot of me thinks that this isn't necessarily entirely to do with the GCC. Sure, we can think of this in the context of Saudi putting pressure on Iran, potentially in the realm of some sort of nuclear deal. But equally, it strikes me as potentially more likely that this is to do with American shale oil, if you know what I mean. If the price is relatively low, what is it, $70 a barrel, around that kind of a mark, if it can sustain there, then it's not economical for all these companies in America to get that shale oil out, which is, of course, or will be, of course, a huge concern, a huge extra glut of supply in the near future. So it strikes me that that's the kind of angle that they're going for there. Of course, I mean, specifically in your question, that doesn't give us an easy answer. I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, there's a broad range of break-even oil prices, of course. I mean, certainly Oman is one of the worst in the GCC, one of the highest in the GCC, rather. But again, more interesting to come.
Sorry, one of the highest in terms of
break-even oil price,
sure,
for their budget. Excuse me. So, but one of the more interesting points is, of course, Yemen, which is, I mean, for the third time I bring this up, it's even higher. It's not that far off. What, $170, $180, I think. And so the effect on Yemen, for example, it's just a problem multiplier, it strikes me.
Khalid Batarfi, how much of a factor are falling oil prices at this summit? Are the leaders going to be worried about that as those prices continue to fall, or is it not a major concern right now?
I believe all GCC members in OPEC agreed on letting the market decide the price, not intervening by reducing their production and losing their share in the market. It's not like Saudi Arabia is exceeding its quota. Saudi Arabia can go as much as more than 12 millions a barrel a day, but they are sticking with 9 millions, around 9 million, which means they are not intervening whether by overproducing or underproducing and gloating the market. And the GCC countries, maybe the members of OPEC, agreed on letting this text, because otherwise we will lose later, because what you leave for the others, like the American companies, shale oil, they will take your seats. It's just you are giving them your share of the market. It's not like you are helping the prices on the long run. And that's how Saudi Arabia and the GCC members convinced OPEC, the other members of OPEC, of letting the market take control of the price.
Saeed al-Shahabi, what's your view on this?
Well, I think everybody is pointing to the Saudi overproduction. My colleagues say that it is producing only 9 million. My reading is that it is producing in excess of 10 million barrels per day. And I think this is a very important issue. For example, the situation now in various countries, especially in Bahrain, where I come from, there is a lot of instability there. There are protests, there are prisoners, and the GCC seems to me has failed us as people. Both politically and economically, the people are living. Many people are living under the line of poverty, and at the same time, when the people rise in order to get some of their political demands, they are crushed by intervention from the GCC countries, like especially in this case Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So that I think we always have aspired for a bloc to unite us all as members and as people of the region. But when we see that our friends and our rulers are abandoning us at the hours of our needs, then we feel betrayed politically and also economically. So I believe and I hope the GCC summit this time will address these grievances by the people, not just to address the issues of ISIS and Iran and other foreign problems. We have to have and to deal with our own domestic, local crisis, which is causing a lot of concern. And ISIS is not going to succeed if the local population is happy and it is content with the political situation. But if they are not happy, of course, ISIS can recruit and can also create and lead to extremism and terrorism. And of course, I hope also that the GCC summit this time will also address the issue of sectarianism, because that is a destructive force that has been imposed on our people, which they don't want. They want to live as friends, as brothers and sisters, within the religion of Islam, within the culture of humanity, and away from the sectarian or cultural divides.
Khalid Batarfi, if I come back to you on this, and I want to get back to the issue of the Muslim Brotherhood and the perception of Qatar's support for it. As long as that support continues in some form, maybe less so now, but as long as that continues in some form after this summit, this rift with Saudi Arabia and the other countries really going to be resolved?
Well, I believe it's in the way of being resolved. It's gradual, but let us remember it's only a few weeks since they agreed, and we don't know exactly what is the agreement, but we could see that there is a movement towards this agreement, like some members of prominent members of the Brotherhood are leaving Doha, and it's not the same stand Al Jazeera we used to. It was almost an hourly coverage of the situation, and quite frankly biased towards, very much biased towards the Brotherhood. Now we are seeing a kind of little bit change, and we will have to wait a little longer to see if this affects also supporting the people who are anti their own governments and giving them nationalities, Qatari nationality. We also saw a good movement towards an agreement in this regard. So we will have to wait. Also, Qatar joined the campaign against Daesh. And now we could see
this
a lot
is the Arabic word for
statements.
ISIL that you're referring to.
Because I don't agree to call it the Islamic nation. It's not Islamic at all, and it doesn't present us, represent us or Muslims.
That's absolutely
so
fine. I just wanted to make that
clear
for our viewers, that's all. Thank you.
Yes.
If I could turn back to you on this, David Roberts. I mean, when we look at the GCC, how much of substance is actually achieved in some of these summits? Is most of it done in the kind of back rooms before and after? I mean, is it just a big talking shop?
You can look at it two ways. If you take the optimistic view, you say that these summits in particular, they're very useful because they set out a broad vision, a grand vision, an idea that is to be achieved. You take the pessimistic view, you say that all there is an announcement. There's just a grand announcement with very little behind it. I mean, I mentioned earlier a couple of the grandiose ideas that have been announced in these sorts of forums before. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, perhaps a bit towards the pessimistic end. There is a tendency to not link up the thoughts of the elite, as it were, their aspirations, with enough work behind the scenes, in the bureaucracies almost, excuse me, to get these ideas to fruition. It is very difficult to form and push through a currency union in the sort of the military realm, which I think is more what the summit in Doha will be about. It's about joint forces, these sorts of ideas. And that is equally difficult. It's, you know, if you've got to in some way subsume your command as a Qatari or as a Bahraini under a Kuwaiti or a Saudi, as the nature of these things dictate, that's a very difficult thing to do. And you have to be forced to do that, excuse me. The last thing I'll say on this is that we have an interesting little paradox here, because why don't the GCC states feel the need to make that extra difficult push for real integration, for real cooperation? And I might suggest that part of it is because of the perceived security guarantees of Western states, America, Britain, France, whomever it is. If they feel they are here, as they most certainly are in Qatar, huge base here, huge base in Manama, of course, elsewhere in the region, if you feel that you don't need to make these difficult political decisions, then you're not going to. So it's a very difficult one to overcome, if you see what I mean.
Saeed Shahabi, we're almost out of time here, but I just want to get your final word on this, on the issue of security and cooperation on those issues. Do you see more cooperation there, or do you see the potential for further divisions?
I think because the Saudis have put Muslim Brotherhood at the top of their concerns, it seems to me that in the not far future we will see more fallouts out of this policy, because at the end of the day, Muslim Brotherhood are people who live in the region. There are many members in various Gulf states, not only just in Egypt, and you cannot just totally abandon them and ignore them and put any one of them in jail. You cannot. This is not a policy. This is what some of the GCC countries are doing. Neither is it a good policy to ignore the people's demands, as is the situation in Bahrain or in Saudi Arabia. For example, the Sultan of Oman did listen to the demands of his people, and he managed to get over the crisis a few years ago, 4 years ago. But in other countries, we saw only the use of force to silence the opposition. I believe that the GCC is likely to face more internal problems among the rulers because of their differences in policies with regards to those challenges.
All right, and on that we are going to have to leave it. Thank you to all three of our guests, Khalid Batarfi in Jeddah, Saeed Shahabi in London, and David Roberts joining me here in the studio in Doha. Thank you for your time. And you can add your voice to this discussion as always. Just post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can contact us on Twitter as well. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. I'm Hazem Sika. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.